Do you like to come with mommy and daddy?
Yeah.
You like to
Oh, yeah.
cola?
Yeah.
You like to smoke cigars?
No.
刘黎过去任职于知名的跨国银行，是月薪100万的超级业务员。而对患有自闭症的儿子来说，他是个尽责却又能同乐的爸爸。
You love your father?
Yeah.
然而，过去的他原生家庭破碎，缺乏父亲的形象。直到遇见天父以及同样身为 ABC 的太太米雪，他才学习成为一家之主。现在，他们到各处演讲，与人分享维持婚姻、照顾身心障碍孩子的甘苦，以及岁月刻画而出的智慧。结离将近半个世纪的这对夫妻，走过婚姻初期的个性磨合，经历大儿子的自闭症、二女儿出生、小儿子过动，却仍然携手相伴，品味生命意想不到的惊喜。
朋友们，你好，欢迎来到今天的真情部落格。我们今天现场来宾是远从美国而来的，他们是早期华人移民的后代，或许会符合大家对于像这样身份的人的一种想象，就是说他们呢毕业于非常好的学校，然后有很好的工作，家里头的经济状况也很不错，孩子看起来也都很好。可是好像一切都很顺利的背后，其实是经历过一些破碎跟修复的过程。在今天在我们的节目现场，要来跟大家一起来做分享。欢迎刘黎跟米雪 ，Welcome to be our guest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, is this your first time to Taiwan?
I came here 55 years ago as a
55 years ago?
55 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm old. At Hua Chao Zhongxue in Banqiao.
So you were here for learning Chinese?
Supposedly, I was here to learn Chinese, but I didn't have my heart in it. So I won everything.
Mm-hmm. So there must be some other reasons that you living away from home.
I did not get along with my stepfather.
Yeah.
He was a German from
he
Iowa.
was a German.
I was very rebellious, and we got into an argument once, and he slapped me, and so at that point it was a broken relationship.
Okay.
And I think that my mother and father talked about it, and it was important for the peace in the household that I be sent away. So it was I could feel that my mother had to choose my stepfather over me. And
what is the biggest influence of this kind of childhood have on you?
I think I became very independent, learned to survive on the streets, so to speak. And I did. Home was not a friendly place.
And Michelle, how about you, your family?
My parents both came from Taishan in Guangzhou area.
Guangzhou.
And they both came and met and married in the U.S. And I was born, and the oldest of 5. I raised my brothers and sisters almost like a mini mom. And my only outlet as a child was reading when we go to the library.
Yeah.
And I loved books. And I learned so much from them. We were not allowed to go anywhere. So going places was really into books.
And your father was a very successful businessman.
Yes, he was. He was very entrepreneurial, and they started off in the supermarket business. And they could have anything they wanted in the market, all the partners, and they decided that the best thing to get was the free liquor, and they started drinking from a young age. And as he drank, he would change in his personality, and then he just became very angry, and it was very frightening for us. Sometimes we just did not know if we would be alive the next morning.
Oh,
because,
really?
Yeah, because he would say that life was very bad, but he would not kill himself without first killing all of us.
Wow.
And then, so these were threats that I kind of grew up with, knowing that I really believed is true because he was violent with other things, not with us, but with objects in the house.
So how did you deal with that?
Well, I, in the beginning, tried to stand up for my mom, who didn't really do anything bad that I noticed.
Yeah.
But it didn't help in the night. I think the time I was really ashamed was when I was around maybe 14 and my mother needed my help to go get him from a bar. And so she was driving, so she couldn't get out, so she brought me. And I had to go into a bar in Chinatown to go get him. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Dad, Mom wants me to get you." And I just tried not to look at everybody that was laughing at me and just pull him out.
When you accept to Stanford, be a Stanford student, I think in a Chinese family, your parents must be very proud of you.
Yes, I was the first person on both sides of the family to even go to college. My parents never insisted that I study anything to work. They just never assumed I would need to work. So they said, study anything you like. Yeah. And so I was very drawn to philosophy. And so I did study that, and it was either that or English.
And really, you were also study hard because you were a student at UCLA too.
I was allowed to go to the best high school,
The best high school?
the same high school that President Obama.
Wow, cool.
It's called Punahou. It's a private school. I got to go because my sister became a champion swimmer.
Wow.
She was one of the best in the States in her. And the school approached my mother and said, "We would like your daughter to swim for us, give her full scholarship." My mother, being very sharp Chinese woman, said, "Okay, but you have to take the brother." And so that's how I got into that school. And then I went to UCLA. I think I'm a good student. It's just that I don't like to work too hard.
So, Liuli, how did you and Misha get to know each other?
It was a summer that she came home to Hawaii as a house guest of a girl I went to high school with. So we boys heard there was a new girl in town. And she came for a fun summer to Hawaii. And I said that I am just the person to make sure you have a fun summer. And I met her at a party, but we were with different dates. But it became inevitable that we would be drawn together.
And Misha, why does Liuli attract you?
Well, first of all, he was the handsomest man I ever laid eyes on, and still is. And then there is something very alive about him. He was not the same predictable kind of guy that I always met. Very spontaneous and fun and loved life. And actually, I was very drawn to it because I had lived such a quiet kind of life, a very serious working, and never had fun.
So you're kind of typical good girls.
Yes,
Yeah.
good girl like
Yeah.
a bad boy.
But how did your parents think about Liuli? You know, as you said, he is a bad boy.
Yes, so when I met him, he's riding motorcycle. And so that my parents, that's unsafe. They don't want him riding motorcycle. They didn't know about how much he gambled. If they knew that, they wouldn't like him at all. But they didn't like his background because his mother remarried a Westerner, and they didn't like that. And he didn't seem to have any plans for the future. So when they asked him what he wanted to do in the future for money, he said he wanted to invent games. And they thought that this is a boy, not a man. And so they just didn't, they wanted me to marry like a doctor or a lawyer, someone more stable. And plus, he was going into the army to fight in Vietnam.
Okay.
Maybe he would die. So they just thought, this is not a good idea.
So how did they stop you?
They kept trying to talk me out of it. And then they eventually said, we are just against him. If you go with him, then we will not take you home. I mean, you will not be with our family anymore. And at that point, I was feeling very, very independent and rather rebellious. And so I did turn to them and say, I'm very sorry you said that because I'm going with him.
Wow.
It was shocking because I always, up to that point, was a very obedient and compliant daughter. But I suppose that even though my parents were against him, there were some good points I saw. And I thought maybe I could really bring out the even better points in him, even though there were lots of negative points. I also felt quite desperate to get out of my home. I didn't want to finish school and go and back live home again. So this was the only person that remotely seemed like to me someone that I liked. But it was full of danger, I could tell.
Yes. Yeah. So why did you make up your mind to marry him? In what kind of situation?
Well, we were very close, and then my father passed away.
Your father passed away?
Yes, he did. Actually, we found out later that he actually took his own life.
Wow.
Because that's what alcohol does. But it was after he passed, and then Lee had heard from the army that he had to go in. And so it was either we married before he goes in and I could join him for a little while he's an officer, or we would wait for 4 years. So my mother no longer had my father and to stand up against us. And so she kind of caved in and said, okay, we will give you a wedding and as you please. So we married. It was not under the best circumstances.
Yes.
It was not the most happy thing. I was studying at Columbia, finishing my master's degree. I didn't even go back to plan the wedding. I did not even pick the dress or any of the guests or any of my presents. I just said, I'm in a mad rush. I will just show up. You can pick everything. I will show up. I only pick the groom. The things I thought were so attractive in the beginning became very irritating. So his spontaneity in the beginning ended up, I thought, he's just irresponsible. You know, and playful was so fun in the beginning, but now it's like, it's time to get serious. So everything started to change, and I began to think I had made a terrible mistake.
I think it was Typhoon Signal 8. All the streets were completely deserted. They were flooded. All the water was up to our knees. And my dad said, hey, Christy, you want to go for a walk? And my mom and my brother were scared. You know, you could drown, you could die, you could
特
get
质
hit by
天差地远的两人，关系曾一度降到冰点，但一对基督徒夫妇却成为他们最好的帮助，也是效法的榜样。
For my mom, she is quite a natural leader, very strong, great ideas, able to take charge. But I think that because of her passion for God and for the Word of God, which asks her to submit to her husband, she has willingly submitted to my dad. I've seen that time and time again. She's willingly submitted to my dad in decisions that are very hard, maybe decisions that she disagreed with, but that really shows a passion for the Bible and just a passion for obedience to God, even when it's hard and unnatural.
At an early age, I remember they used to always open up their home. I think it's very Chinese to go to people's house and, you know, treat them for dinner. I think Chinese really enjoy doing that, especially if they're doing like a Western meal. Like, for example, they do big get-togethers for Thanksgiving. And from there, you know, they're actually very tactful when sharing the gospel, and they've had so much experience sharing with all kinds of different people that they're constantly looking for the ask.
I have a beautiful necklace that I also want to share that's from Misha's mother, and that is mine, and it's pearls, and then it's this cluster of stones falling from it. Because they are generously investing in others, they have become so fruitful, like this necklace, and so my encouragement from them is to live that way, and that's how I want to live. And I also hope and pray that others will meet them and be able to read the book that's coming out, and their lives will be so impacted by their story. And it's God's grace.
刘黎跟米雪其实出生的背景，他们的原生家庭是截然不同的。当然，他们俩个性也很不一样，以至于后来他们两个结婚之后呢，其实刚开始是面临到很多的挫折还有摩擦。After you two get married, you were assigned to Germany soon.
I was on an air defense missile site in Germany, and so we would pull around-the-clock duty to watch for attack. And I was the head of the unit of 6 or 7 soldiers that was on a remote site watching the border with radars and missiles.
And did you get used to the life and the culture in army?
No, I don't think I could get used to it. It was during the Vietnam War, and people were talking about how Asians were the enemy. They can't tell the difference between a South Vietnamese, a Chinese, a Japanese, or Korean. To
All the
them.
same to them.
It's all the same. So we had the Korean War, we had the Vietnam War, and so I realized that I was an outsider. They have a term. It's called gook, and I resented that when they were always talking about gook this and gooks did that. It's a very derogatory to dehumanize Asian people.
And Misha, you moved to Germany too.
Yes.
Do you speak German?
I didn't speak German at all. I was very isolated. And in the beginning, I didn't live in the base with the other soldiers. He found a little apartment for me in a rural village outside. And so I could talk to no one, and I couldn't go anywhere because I couldn't drive. He was also on duty for 24 hours at a time. So I was left alone a lot.
So you only have each other.
That's right.
So how about your marriage that time? The
Well, you
relationship
would think
between
that
you
it
two.
would turn, that we would be more close.
Yeah.
But instead, we became much more, we turned on each other, and we could see each other in stark light. And I am naturally a very critical person. So I began to, instead of always defending him to my parents, now I'm already married to him, I could turn and look at him and think, oh my goodness, what have I done? And the things I thought were so attractive in the beginning became very irritating. So his spontaneity in the beginning ended up, I thought, he's just irresponsible. And playful was so fun in the beginning, but now it's like, it's time to get serious. So everything started to change, and I began to think I had made a terrible mistake.
So you must be very regret not listening to your parents, right?
I really did. I regretted it a great deal. I regretted the fact that it came between me and my father. I did not have a good ending with my father. And that who thought I was so smart to make my own decision, insisting I only want to pick the groom, made such a big mistake. It was the lowest point in my life.
Where she said, I have to go home. I don't want to be here with you.
So you live Germany?
Well, I was thinking about it.
Oh, you're just thinking about that?
Yes, and then something really unusual happened.
Yeah.
Suddenly we met a couple, and they were teachers, and I was a teacher. And so I met them, and there was just something very special about them. And in no time, I just said to them, very straightforward, why are you different from everybody? I've never met anyone like you. What is your secret? Are you taking a new drug? Are you meditating? What is it? Tell me. And I still remember them hesitating and saying, well, we have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I said, you've got to be kidding. That is the most uncool thing I have ever heard. Also I studied philosophy. I studied Marx. I really liked him. I thought what he said, that religion is the opiate of the people, was true. It's just for weak people. But then even as I said this to my friends, I knew that actually I'm not so strong either. So this was at a time when I started to realize I'm not so strong, and I was very humbled. And in my great strength, look what I did with my life. You see, so I was drawn to these people because they had this, a happiness, a joy about them. And they showed genuine love for us. And I wanted to know what makes people do that. And so I wanted to know more, but then when they said they were Christian, I said, oh, I already know about this. They said, well, we want to talk more. I said, oh, no, it's okay. You guys can, it's good for you, not for me. And they said, no, we must share because it is the most important thing. It has changed our lives. And so they continued to talk to us, and I just told them, listen, I am just an agnostic. An agnostic is someone who says, even if there is a God, I just don't believe anyone can know for sure. And they said, oh, but our God says that if you seek him, he will let himself be known. He will reveal himself. And that was actually stunning to me because I always just was very safe to say, you cannot know. And they said, well, why are you afraid? Why don't you ask him? Why don't you ask him to show himself to you? And I didn't actually, I kept arguing that night. But when I went home, in the quiet of my room, I remember laying in my bed, looking out in the darkness of the room as if it were the darkness of my own heart without God. And I started thinking, is it possible that there could be a God that loves me and wants to have a relationship with me and actually could change my life? I thought at first, this is too good to be true. How can you be so wishful thinking? These Christians are like that, you know? But then I thought, what if it's real? What if it's true? Then I'd be the fool. Just because it's too good does not mean it cannot be true. And what have I got to lose? What have I done now so far? And so I just said, if you're out there, God, and you want to have something to do with me, I would like it. Just go ahead, do what you have to do.
And what happened then?
I fell asleep, but the next morning I woke up, and I knew something had changed. Before I thought maybe there's a God, but that morning it began to feel kind of exciting, like it could be really true. And I felt this new kind of happiness. I wanted to find out more about him. So I went to find a Bible because I knew in a Bible I could find out more about him. And I wanted to check the primary source myself. So I got a Bible and I started reading in the New Testament. Now, when I was at Stanford, I knew you have to read the Bible to know about Western civilization. So I had to read it before, but it always irritated me to read it because just starting with the virgin birth, I thought it was such an insulting idea. How can anyone expect me to believe that a virgin has a baby? So I would just stop right there. But as I started reading again, I found that I read that part and I thought, well, if God wanted to make a virgin have a baby, he could. And then I just kept reading. It just didn't bother me. And it started to make sense. And it started to be wonderful. And it was so wonderful, I just couldn't put the book down. And I thought, is this the same book that I couldn't stand before? Something changed. It wasn't the book. I think it was me.
And after that, is the attitude you react with your husband, it changed too?
You changed quite a bit.
You did think?
Yeah.
So you noticed that too?
Well, yeah, well, basically being very self-centered. The big change was she's no longer mad at me. She is happy.
Always happy.
She's not unhappy anymore. And she's really focused on what the Bible was telling her. The Bible was giving her hope about a new life.
And for you, what was the key reason that led you to accept this faith?
The people that introduced us to Christianity also ran a little coffee house. So in the early 1970s, around 71, that was a popular thing to hang out. So go down to a coffee house and have coffee and meet girls and talk over candle lit. And we hung around the coffee house a lot because these people became our only friends. They became our new friends. But the atmosphere of the coffee house was just it just had the presence of God in it. So people were kind, people were interested, good conversations, nobody worried about who you were or what your position was. I was the only lieutenant, and there was a lot of soldiers there, but I really felt for the first time the love of God. And of course I grew up without a father, but I really felt a tangible love in the room, and I felt that it was God's love. It took about 2.5 weeks. I finally broke down. It really slowly broke me down, and in tears, I think I realized I should give my life to God.
After becoming a Christian, what's the biggest difference that happened to you?
Well, it's just amazing. In a worldly sense, I got promoted. I was the worst candidate, but everybody ahead of me was sent to Vietnam. And pretty soon they had nobody else to become the commanding officer. So that's a real joke that I became a commanding officer of 180 men. And I had a different attitude at work. I wanted to do a good job. And then I got promoted again to go to headquarters to become race relations officer. I saw that there was a position, they call it affirmative actions. I applied for it saying, I am Chinese. I am not black. I am not white, but I am Chinese. So I am in the middle between this conflict. I am uniquely qualified to address both sides, and I have a heart to bring these two people together. And I got this job.
How about your relationships after you were becoming a Christian?
It really improved quite a bit. I'm not sure I did much. She really became a very loving person. She became very positive. We were focused on being with our friends. I mean, this couple really loved us. And we went with them everywhere. We went hunting for antiques. We went to Belgium to a Christian conference. I even joined their singing group. It was a country and western singing group, and I had Hawaiian ukulele, and I played my Hawaiian ukulele, and we went around Germany. So that was a very good community. And
he began to be have a lot of tantrums and screaming fits. And then he began his bizarre ritualistic behavior where he would just stare at things and play with things really inappropriately. And I began to really worry and bring him to doctors.
Yes.
But that was a long time, 40 years ago, and so autism was virtually unheard of.
You did? You find it? Did you find one, David? Give me 5.
40年前，刘黎和米雪的大儿子 David 诊断为自闭症，合并心智发展迟缓。教养和照顾的困难，以及旁人异样的眼光，考验着两人如何以爱和智慧守护这个家。
Sometimes when he'd be throwing a fit or something like that, like in a grocery store, I would feel embarrassed. And other times, maybe in a restaurant, and I would notice people staring. We asked my parents, why is he different? Why can't he talk? And they explained to us that he was very special, and that God was trying to decide which family to give David to. He was saying, the way that my mom explained it was, she said, well, how about the cheese? How about the Wongs over here. And then as she was telling us, my sister and I were jumping up and down saying, give them to us, give them to us.
My dad actually invented a really fun game called a seal catch, and basically what that is David had to throw a seal toy to my dad over our heads. So my brother and I would be in the middle, and we would try to grab the seal toy, and so we were all fighting over who he could throw it to. So that was a really fun game because it gave him a lot of attention, and it allowed us to really have fun together as a family.
The journey in my life with my husband was also having a child with special needs. And right after we adopted our son, Misha and Lee contacted us immediately when they heard that he had severe brain damage. And they were the first people to reach out to us, and we had lunch together. And it's because I watched them and I watched David, and it's had such a profound impact in my life of giving me faith and giving me hope and giving me great joy.
本来关系非常紧张的这对夫妻，没有想到因着信仰开始扭转他们看待彼此的眼光，也很期待他们第一个孩子的降临哦。却是没有想到，他们第一个孩子是一个特殊状况的孩子，是一个自闭症的孩子。So Misha, when did you find out something wrong with him?
So he seemed perfectly normal till he was 1, and then he had the vaccine, and then he became very feverish, and then he regressed a lot.
Yeah.
And he began to be have a lot of tantrums and screaming fits. And then he began his bizarre ritualistic behavior where he would just stare at things and play with things really inappropriately. And I began to really worry and bring him to doctors.
Yes.
But that was a long time, 40 years ago, and so autism was virtually unheard of.
Did you have any idea of that?
Well, I started to research, and the research said that the cause of it was a cold mother.
Wow.
Which I thought, that must be me. I said, I'm not the warmest thing, but I'm not that cold. So in my own common sense, I just did not believe what the professionals said.
But what kinds of treatments you've ever tried?
So it was, you would hear from people things like, oh, mega vitamins, or change his diet, or, all kinds of things. We've even gotten things like acupuncture for the tongue, or go and get some mushrooms that are, grown on some special mountain that only monkeys can pick. We tried all kinds of things. And parents of special needs children are very vulnerable to this kind of thing. And after a while, you have to decide what you will do and what you won't do.
Jill, what did you feel when you find out that your kid has this kind of special?
I wanted to know what the medical diagnosis was. But more important to me as a Christian, I wanted to know why this is happening to me. What is God doing? Were you not paying attention? Is this an accident? Is this something, a payback? What's happening?
Yes.
And actually it was more confusing because friends who are very well-meaning would ask us questions too. Even our pastor asked us if it was some unconfessed sin that we had. And we thought if only it was that, because then we could just confess it and then it would change. So other friends would even suggest that maybe we were under a curse, in which we would have to go and try to undo the curse. Or others suggested that maybe he had a demon. Now I bring this up because I think it's very common for parents to hear these things, and parents are very
guilty?
Well, they're willing to be guilty. They're vulnerable. And for me, you have to kind of consider everything.
Yeah.
We started thinking, and we realized that as Christians, we don't have hard things happen just because of something in the past. We do not get, God doesn't pay us back like that. What we do has consequences, and it can do negative things. But just because you have negative things, it doesn't mean that it's a result of something you did. Then ultimately we go to the Bible, and the Bible really helped me.
Yes.
One in particular, I remember reading in John chapter 9 when the disciples met a blind man who was born blind, and they said to Jesus, why is this man born blind? Is it his sin or his parents? And I thought, this is my question. Is it something wrong with David or something we did? And Jesus said, it is neither. It is that the work of God might be displayed in him. And from that moment on, I decided that this is what I will do. I will look to see how God displays his work in this boy.
And Lee, as a father, how did you pray for David?
It was difficult. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. Because it gradually happened after a year. I was so excited. I have a son. I'm going to be the father to him, but that I never had. And then he can't respond to me. So it was a big disappointment. Then I really started to pray. I would walk our dog every night in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. We lived near the park. So one night I was walking the dog, and I just realized that God gave us the son special. And the competitive instincts kicked in. And I'm a card player, and so when God was saying, time to get a son, he was pick a card. And I said, I would like to get a handsome guy. I would like to get someone like Jeremy Lin. Of course, I didn't know him then. I would like to get a very smart guy, and I picked an autistic son card. So I just thought that if this is a card God gave me, and about maybe 6,000 autistic boys were born in the world that year. So I said, I will play this card as the best father. So maybe it's a competitive or like in me, but I said, I will play this card better than any other father because I am just evaluated with those other fathers. So I began by taking David off her hands, maybe taking him out for a walk or giving her a chance to get a nap. So I would play with him. And then I started to help in the training because I thought she was a little bit too soft, too motherly, and so David needed a strong dad, and he needed training. And then third, I became the disciplinarian. It turned out that when he was young, he used to like to he would just run. And then he doesn't know that there's a street and there's cars coming. So I could say, David! And I could stop him suddenly. I really could stop him before he would run into the street. So the fear of his father could save his life because of that tone. And that is the same with our Heavenly Father. We both love him and fear him. And the fear of our Heavenly Father would save our lives. So David, I always remember that. I want him to both love me and to fear me, and to do that balance. And he does that. He does. He loves me very much. He's very happy when I come home. He greets me at the door. He always wants to go with me. But at the same time, he does fear me, and I can jolt him.
And Misha, as a mother, you are the main person to take care of David, right?
That's right.
So what was the most frustrating moment?
I think in the beginning, the fact that he had terrible tantrums every day, about 5 times a day for 20 minutes at a time, actually was making me feel like I'm going crazy. And so actually it drove me to go look for some help. And I did find some help in the agency. There's a government agency in the States that helps people. And they sent a trainer out to me. And so they taught me actually how to make him look in my eyes.
Yes.
And how to eventually stop screaming, start talking, start eating things, all kinds of things. And it was a system that's based on rewards and punishment. And it helped me observe the way I treated him and what I was doing that actually rewarded the wrong behavior.
Could Debbie ever have any kind of feedback to you that made you feel very touched?
Autistics generally keep to themselves and they don't respond very much. But I think that for a long time, maybe much later, maybe when he's around 8 or 10, every night I would tell him, I love you, David, and God loves you. And I know they have this thing called echolele where they actually can repeat everything. And if I really wanted to, I could make him say, I love you, Mommy. I could say, David, say, I love you, Mommy. And he would say it. But somehow that's just not so joyful to hear because I made him say it. But I would tell him every night, I love you, and just hope. And one day he just said, I love you, Mommy. And I'll never forget because he's never said it again. But that's okay. It's okay.
And after Debbie, you have Christy and Michael.
Yes, it did. Well, Christy, so each of our children are very different. So Christy is very gifted, very talented, and intelligent, learns everything quickly. And Mike.
She went to Harvard.
And yeah, she eventually went to Harvard, and then she went to Berklee College of Music and is now a composer and producer of music, Christian music. And my son Mike is very active. He had ADD. Actually, many siblings of autistics have ADD. So he had a hard time concentrating. And teachers complained about him a lot. And he was very playful and always falling out of his chair and doing silly things. So but not doing well in school. So that was hard.
For yourself, have you ever think about that? Oh my God, I'm so tired.
Oh yeah.
I really want to get away from this.
Yes, of course. I was very tired and I didn't have too much rest. But we did have some help that would come in to clean, and sometimes we would try to actually go out by ourselves to have, and it's really important for husband and wife of special needs child especially to get away and focus on each other, because we are his key support.
Yeah.
And if we run out of gas, then the whole family is in trouble.
Yeah.
And so we need to constantly be filling our tank with each other and spending time with each other. So we have done that ever since they were little, although it was extremely difficult. In the States, we don't have help. So we have to hire babysitters, and not very many people actually wanted to babysit David because he was so hard.
Yeah.
But anyway, we made the effort.
And Misha, have you ever worried about the future of David?
Yes, I have. And I think that the greatest support for a special needs child is his family. And so from a very young age, I felt it was very important for the children to learn to really love him, not be overly burdened by him, or feel that all the resources of the family were taken up by him, not only the money, but the attention. So it was important for me to try to spread that out to the others, so that they would never say at the end, oh, my brother ruined our childhood, or our family was chaotic and I hate it. But instead, I wanted them to say, we were so blessed to have David in our family. So that was how I raised them, so that eventually, when we are gone, that they would feel not just the obligation, but they would feel the love that we want to care for David ourselves.
Jill, how did you do?
We always stressed when they were young, you know, how David is part of our family, and we tried to train him so he's easier to take care of.
Okay.
Now that they're older, they're all adults now, and they have their own children. We tried to bring David with us, and although it's hard for him because he doesn't like the sound of babies crying, and they have a lot of babies, but I assure them that the babies will grow up. And but so it's just all part of accepting David who he is, and the blessing that he is, along with the hard things. It's, you know, both together.
We're all very fortunate. I am so arrogant because I came from a disadvantaged home. But I think this son, especially in public. Once I was speaking at a church rally. My son was 4 years old, and he broke away and came up, and I saw him standing there, but he decided to go to the bathroom on the microphone right then. I didn't know what to do, except stop him or let him finish, but those humbling moments are really precious to me. We can't do anything about that.
Yeah, And at the end of this interview, is there anything else that you want to share to our audience?
I never had it. I never had a father, never had a family. So I had, I didn't have any really good character, but it's been my friendship with God that has helped me. And so I think I think we should continue to take advantage of the relationship we had with a living God. Never stop growing.
And Misha, what else you want to share with our audience?
Before, I thought I had little plans for myself. But when you give your life to God, He expands it beyond your dreams. I never dreamt I would write a book about the difference God has made in my life, let alone be here on this show. And yet God would take something small, and if you give it to Him, He will make it. He will take it to Himself, and He will bring glory to Himself. And there's nothing greater than to live for Him. And He will make all things beautiful. Romans 8:28 says, and we know that God causes all things to work together for good, for those who love Him, for those who are called according to His purpose. That means that no matter what happens, all the suffering, trials, questions you have will be redeemed and become meaningful.
确实，在圣经上讲到这万事互相效力，有的时候呢，我们对于这个苦难的事情，往往会觉得不了解为什么它会发生，是我今天做错了什么事情吗？不过今天透过他们的见证，有的时候我们真是能够感受到什么叫做苦难其实是包装的祝福。Thank you, thank you.
神迹对许多人来说是生命当中一次特别的经历，但是对基督徒而言，神迹则是上帝在我们一生当中工作的痕迹。在今天，我们听见刘黎弟兄和米雪姐妹这对夫妇生命的故事。上帝在他们各自不完全的原生家庭里，做成了奇妙的工作，就是让两个不完美的人结合，组成一个就人的眼光来看，应该是一个很完美的婚姻。他们很努力，想要摆脱原生家庭的不完整，透过努力的投入家庭、投入婚姻，尝试要遗忘的不完美。理论上应该要很成功的，以他们的经历，以他们的学历。但是就在摆脱不完美，要渴望进入婚姻的完美，他们所生的孩子却给他们极大的挑战。在刚刚我们所听见的故事里头，这对夫妇要面对老大他的自闭症状态，这件事情对这一对夫妻来说是一个很大的挑战。该如何面对生命当中这一个不完美呢？很多人可能觉得好可惜，就像是我们看见一件漂亮的衣服，上面点了一个黑点点，我们会觉得要是没有这个黑点点，不知道有多好。就像是婚姻，就像是家庭，我们何等希望爸爸妈妈每一个家里的成员，每一个孩子都很会读书、孝顺。对家庭或对人生完美的渴望，常常充满在我们的人生当中。但是我们要去哪里寻找完美？其实整个基督教的信仰让我们看见的，就是当我们将不完美的生命交在他的手中，我们会经历到真正的完美。而完美不是形式上的，就像是刘黎和米雪他们的家，没有因为他们信耶稣，所以自闭症的孩子他的病就完全得康复。这个限制依然在，从人的角度来说，这个黑点点依然在那里。但是他们怎么面对呢？在节目结束之前，我们看见、听见做妈妈的分享，万事互相效力。他从上帝的眼光来看这一个家庭的十字架，透过上帝的眼光，他们与天父之间有亲密的关系、亲密的连结。这个连结会让我们看见，这就是基督信仰讲的完美。完美是我们跟他之间的关系越来越亲近。完美不是我们没有生病，完美也不是我们没有困难。在人生里头有各样的挑战，但是当我们将挑战带到他的面前，你会发现与神亲近的关系给我们新的眼光来接纳我们的一生。我们一起来祷告。 天父，谢谢你，在你的眼中，我虽然有许多斑斑点点，但你透过耶稣基督的宝血所遮盖的，给我看见的是新生命的盼望。我的人生也有许多斑斑点点，恳求你让我有盼望的将这一切交在你的手中，透过你救赎的工作，我能够经历到新的生命，能够经历到与你之间有新的关系，让我明白在万事的苦难中有你的同在，使我的生命能够为主效力。同心祷告，奉耶稣基督的名求，阿们。亲爱的朋友，这位耶稣在我们生命遇到难处的时候与我们同在，不只是一时，而是一生。